thank you for joining us this week for our inaugural episode of today's Capital Raise. We have with us from Gale's Shoes, Gregg, out of New York City. How are you doing today, Rob?
I'm fantastic. How about yourself?
Very good, very good. So, how did you enjoy your time in COVID in the middle of New York City?
Sure. Well, it was interesting with lockdown and how things changed, but that actually was the catalyst for launching this business. And they always say necessity is the mother of invention. And getting to the point where I had built up this shoe venture concept, and I had sort of earned my stripes in the direct-to-consumer marketing world, and got to the point where I was ready to go full steam, and in fact exited my day job, sold my founder shares, and was ready to go full steam. Well, that particular business was focused in the luxury sector, and as it's no surprise, the bottom more or less fell out specifically for footwear. So it afforded me the opportunity, I would say, to take a stronger look at, well, where's a real need and how can I address this market? And through that, and some feedback loops, which we'll be talking about on the call today, through that feedback loop and iterative process, came up with a concept to address a real need in personal protective shoes for medical professionals.
If you could take us on the journey from your experience designing shoes previously to being part of COVID.
What ended up happening, I started by donating $200 from every pair sold towards the production of PPE, which then connected me in a more meaningful way to the director of nursing, Rebecca Love, who's president of SONSIL, stands for Society of Entrepreneurs, Innovators, Entrepreneurs, and Leaders. And what she told me is that the number one problem today, which, by the way, has been the number one problem in infection control and will continue to be past the COVID pandemic, is footwear, tracking disease in and out of hospitals. And there's a certain degree that you're never going to be able to overcome. But the more shocking incident that I uncovered, especially with the new standards in PPE, where you're covering your ears, nose, mouth, face, everything soup to nuts, is the fact that the majority of medical professionals are wearing mesh athletic shoes, which is kind of the same thing as building a submarine with screen doors. And in fact, anything that drops on these shoes is going straight through to the skin. So this, to me, was this eye-opening moment of, okay, why does this not exist? So I did a lot of research and ended up going, okay, well, I've got a background in footwear. It's a real need and a real problem for this. Let me actually find out how big this problem is. So I started creating an ongoing feedback loop, where I initially set up a Google survey. It's pretty straightforward and simple to do. I don't know why more individuals, especially starting businesses, haven't yet. So a strong suggestion to look into that. But rather than this mentality of if you build it, they will come, I said, well, let me just ask, do they want this built? And I opened this iterative process, garnered feedback, and they basically told me point blank what the market gap was. So I started to develop towards this gap, kept the ongoing feedback loop in terms of what are your needs? Does this actually fit those needs that you're looking for? And ended up crowdsourcing and developing this shoe with two spec specifically for this community, positioned for this community. And I took a look at, okay, well, this makes a lot of sense. You take a look at Figs and Janu that realized doctors and nurses are people too, and they want to look nice at work. So why not footwear? So we built this business up, formed some strategic partnerships with the chemical supplier that actually created or owns some of the manufacturing process for Crocs. So it's got antimicrobial materials, tapped into my network of Italian suppliers and designers, and together we put this together with Ortholite as well. I've developed this shoe. We've got our 3D prints done now to date.
On those feedback loops, kind of at each stage, during that initial kind of product conceptualization where you were going out to the medical community, how specifically, like, were you sending out online surveys? Were you like walking down to the hospital and talking to people? Were you getting referred to other nurses through Rebecca and just building out like an email? How did you actually get that feedback to create your surveys?
Yeah, the wonderful world of social media. So I didn't actually realize I knew that many doctors and nurses, but I've got about 14,000 followers, which isn't that much. But I put it on my Instagram story and I said, hey, I'm looking for feedback. If this is a problem for you, specifically with footwear for medical professionals, I'd love it if you could take a look at this. And I don't even think I had a call to action for them to ask their other friends, but just organically, I ended up collecting data from 89 different medical facilities, primarily in the United States, but some in the UK and Australia. And so that in and of itself told me the fact that they're sharing this with their colleagues means that this is an exciting topic for them. And through that iterative process, we got extremely granular. We had some open form survey questions. We got even down to what are the specific shoes that you wear? What's the exact price that you pay for these shoes? Do you match them to your outfits? What is your specific profession? What are the exact pain points that you have? And then the design process was fantastic. It's like a designer's dream, and I don't know why other people wouldn't do this. But my initial
Oh, it's
stab
taking
at
jobs away. That's what you're doing right there. You got the designers at Nike that are saying, well, that's what I get paid $300,000 a year for. We don't want to find out that we should get this for free from
right,
social media feed.
right,
I mean, that's the real reason, right? And
exactly.
so then when you went to the next stage and you were starting to talk to the designers and manufacturers based on that, the initial feedback of the design that the medical community wanted, how then did you kind of go through the iterative process of, selecting material, saying like, that one's going to be a little too expensive, or can we, cut corners here and design something that is, just as effective, but somehow, more efficient selection of the ortholite insole versus alternatives? How did you go through that iterative on the design build process?
Yeah, so what's interesting is this technically isn't a shoe, it's an injection molded product. So with footwear, you've got a ton of different, almost an infinite possibilities of material selection from like when I was doing classic Italian shoes with the leathers. Each particular batch of leather is going to fit differently. The sizing is different, the comfort is different, how you skeeve it to 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters. There's so many intangible variables. Whereas in this particular case, I'm using a patented compound that is antimicrobial by nature. It's 3 times lighter than the next closest comparable material, and it's consistent. So it has the same properties when you basically stamp these or injection mold these out. They're going to be pretty much identical all throughout the process, which to me is fantastic because you eliminate a lot of these batch variables. And in terms of the material selection, I said, okay, it's got to be able to be wiped clean, because in the medical profession now they're using bleach wipes to effectively wipe down a shoe. But as you can imagine, that's not a very effective solution. If you've got a mesh shoe, you definitely don't want bleach coming through to your skin. I even removed the laces on it. Originally, I was going to use rubber laces, and they're saying, well, why use laces at all when that's just going to catch and collect dust? So through this iterative process, the community basically told me, these are the materials that you should be using in the shoe. We want it lightweight. We want it comfortable. We want to be able to wear it with or without socks, which you can, and even on the insoles as well. So there's really thoughtful design. When it comes to an insole, again, infinite number of possibilities for different densities of foam, thicknesses of foam, open cell, closed cell, all these properties.
It's just a matter of getting the word out, and I'm sure the more one party helps another, the more they're going to get helped. So
yeah, exactly.
Join us next week when we will hopefully have the second episode of today's Capital Raise, and we'll be able to update you on Rob's wild success in securing his first round of capital. Well, thank you, Rob, for the time. I appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be able to help support you and as this company evolves and develops moving forward, and get you the capital that you need to be able to make sure that this becomes a reality and that these healthcare workers actually see the kind of benefit that I think Gales can provide.
Yeah, I'm excited.